We are live. Welcome to my video. This is going to be about the 2007 movie 28 Weeks Later. And as usual, we'll start with a spoiler-free review. I will only be spoiling the first movie in the review itself, and then the thoughts section, where I spoil everything in this movie, including the ending, so do not watch that part if you haven't already watched the movie, unless you are 100% certain you will never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, get back together with Taylor Swift. Or watch the movie, for that matter. And, yeah. I think I might forego a plot summary. Not that I've been completely consistent on doing those recently anyway. It walks and it spews. The people spewed on walk and they spew. Now, let's see, I need to organize my notes better. Here we go. Yeah, so, right, this was written by Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, Enrique Lopez Lavin, and Jesus Olmo. Yes, this was in part written by Jesus, who I'm told will be returning as a zombie any day now, so maybe it's an autobiography. And, yeah, Fresnadillo, also directed the movie, and the same thing for Intacto. He also wrote The Path, and that's of these the only one he wrote that he did not direct. And let's see, then we have some of the others are also let's see. Yeah, so they've written other stuff. I'm not really familiar with their other work. So, let's take a look at some of the user reviews. I'm sure it'll all be intelligent. I quote, "I don't like the haircut of the boy." Seriously though, a lot of user reviewers and critics have interesting things to say about the movie. Now, one thing, some quotes here. Too many instances of convenient writing. Let's see. I find it horrifying Alex Garland could make the time to write a Halo movie, but it couldn't give this crappy script a rewrite. It'd take maybe a week to fix it. Some of the dialogue especially, my friend said it sounded like a bad Spanish to English Babelfish translation. I can grant that some of it is not the most natural in the wording. The actors do their best. I think a lot of the time they succeed in making it work, but yeah. It's too bad because some of these, like, I love the Evil Dead remake. That was also made by, someone whose native language is not English, and I want to say that was also Spanish in that case, or a variation on Spanish, and on that one it was in part because what was her name again? Diablo Cody, went over the dialogue and Americanized it, and yeah, that might have been good for someone to do on this one. Right. Let's see. I think I will move on. So I am one of the people who dislike some of the differences between these two movies. I don't know if he came up with it, but Outlaw Verne referred to this franchise as the 28 Time Unit series, so I will do so as well. I do prefer the first entry in the series overall. It is important to remember this movie was not taken away from Danny Boyle and Alex Garland. Danny Boyle was an executive producer on this, as was Garland, and, according to Wikipedia, Boyle, he was making he was giving us sunshine at the time. So the very very important, big, gives us all life. It's necessary for plants to grow. But he did. Let's see. He hired Fresnadillo, believing he would be able to bring a fresh new perspective to the film. And he was a huge fan of the 2001 film Intacto, also by Fresnadillo. Let's see. And I thought I copied it in. There was something about, Danny Boyle did. Let's see. There was some, I want to say, first unit and second unit direction. I get being frustrated. I get wishing that Danny Boyle was the director of this one, but it was not. It wasn't. This was one of the cases. A lot of the time it's not, but this was one of the cases where the studio did not tear away his baby from him. And as far as I know, he was satisfied with the final product. No, not everything makes sense. Some things are frustrating. I think this is one of those movies where you kind of just have to let the movie take you and go on the emotional ride. And I respect that not everybody can do that. Some people choose not to. And I am not going to tell someone that they are wrong for not doing so, at the very least in this case. Maybe especially because with the first one you didn't really have to just go with it as much. And to be clear, I'm not saying that every movie deserves that you just go with it, but I do think there is enough here that, overall, I would say to go with it. In the first movie, there isn't really any one scene where there's just an absolutely huge amount of infected and you get a good sense of how many there are. It's frequently too chaotic and confusing to be able to tell, if there are a lot or just we're only seeing a few over and over. But in this, we get a lot of shots that make it clear there are dozens of these. Now that the concept was proven successful with the first movie, they can go bigger. One of the first straddles genres. This one is very straightforwardly an action horror movie. I think they're both great, and I'm really glad that they are different from one another. It's a little like the Aliens thing. Like, the first two Alien movies don't have the same scope and aren't exactly the same genre, but are clearly set in the same universe. The second one doesn't feel like it's just the first one again. In both of these cases, I do not think it would have worked as well if the second movie was the first to come out. The cast is larger, the scope grander. A lot of the way it maintains the humanity and glimmers of hope of the original. Basically, the first film is very much about maneuvering a world with a lot of infected where they greatly outnumber the few survivors. This one starts with a lot of survivors and then infection comes back. It's set after the infection that we saw in the first, getting back under control. The film still puts family and relationships ahead of the immediate visceral thrill of survival. I would argue there is more emphasis put on the latter than there was the first time around, and I understand why some people feel that it ends up drowning out family and relationships, and that is, if that is how you feel about it, then I 100%, I am not going to tell you that you're wrong for not really getting into the movie, because that is such a crucial part of the first. And I would frankly hate this movie if I thought that it just did not at all, get it. And for sure, like, the movie has a faster pace. It does try to have a lot of humanity still, but yeah, the faster pace does mean that, there's not a lot of room to breathe. The movie's actually slightly shorter than the first one, but, bigger scope, faster pace means that there's less room for the family stuff. let's see, and yeah, there is something, I don't know if I want to give away. No, I don't think I want to give away. I'll just say we meet a family unit. There is something slightly different from it compared to the one we met in the first one, allowing for more dynamics. And they're not the only characters in this where we find out they have a family that they really miss and want to get back to. It also deals with more long-term questions where, you know, the first film was basically about coming to terms with the new status quo and whether or not we should, you know, even keep fighting. You know, that is an actual question that's brought, and like, what are we fighting for? Is it survival, or is it our souls? You know, is there any chance left for humanity to more than just survive this ordeal? You know, this one presents something to fight for, and a decent amount of the focus is on that fight. And yeah, you know, right. I forget if I've already mentioned, I absolutely love the first movie. I love a lot about this movie. What I say, you know, I'm not really like criticizing the first movie in this film, in this video. I'm talking about the things I think work for this movie. I'm not saying that they would have worked for the first one. And I just realized, completely forgot, yeah, the movie's R-rated, so this video will be. Now, let's see. Yeah, this has more varied scenes, including when it comes to horror and action. Not only those, than the first. And yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for a sequel to do this. They really embrace the chance to do more in the world that the first one set up, you know. And yeah, the fact that we do actually see, you know, the first one of the things that really works is we don't see what the world looked like, and it's also, yeah, we don't need to see what the world looked like before the zombie apocalypse, because it was just a real world, you know. It wasn't, you know, the divergent point was the zombie apocalypse. So, but because it doesn't show it, you know, or only very briefly, you know, only the animal rights activists, you know, releasing the monkeys. And that's not really representative society on the whole, you know. But here we see what it looks like to try to rebuild society after the you know, yeah, shit. It's not called a pandemic when it's not the whole world, when it's one country, because that is one thing. You know, the first one raises the question, this one answers, yes, it was Britain. Wasn't really the rest of the world. You know, they were indeed quarantined, just as a character in the first movie theorized they were being. Yeah. Fuck. Yeah. The kind of pandemic that is epidemic. That's it. Yeah. The epidemic is showing, which technically means hair, so it is technically accurate. But yeah, the epidemic has been brought back under control, and what does it look like when you try to rebuild in that kind of situation, you know? And yeah, it does a really great job. It does genuinely feel like this is what it would probably look like. You get to see different, you know, there's these, you know, there's so many little moments. This is a film that's part of why I think it, you know, yes, faster pace, but there are so many little moments in the film that capture humanity. There's these little things of just, yeah, people, like, there's this bit where you see various people in their rooms, and it's, it's possible that Fresnadillo is, like, a fan of Hitchcock, because, like, it's kind of rear windowy. It's like these snipers looking in through people's windows, you know, but, yeah, one guy's just reading the newspaper, you know, like nothing's happened, and that's and I love, because sometimes that's what you need, you know. Sometimes you need to pretend like the world is normal, you know, and yeah, not a spoiler, just one couple is like having sex, which, yeah, it's kind of creepy that they're perving on them, the snipers are, but yeah, you know, just like these little moments of just, yeah, it's just people trying to live lives, you know. And I don't know if I want to give more moments away, but I'll just, there's so many of these moments throughout the film, you know, and yeah, it works so well that we see, you know, the loss of control, the situation getting, you know, that's not a spoiler. You know, we wouldn't really have a movie if the military were able to immediately stop infection, you know. But yeah, that's not something we see in the first one, and you know, some of it is like budget, and this also wasn't really the movie they wanted to make. You know, Alex Garland didn't really want to make, as far as I understand, I don't think it was ever really considered that much, even if they did have the money. From what I recall, I believe I've heard or read, you know, they wanted to see, well, what does it look like, you know, because there's so many movies that don't really dwell on it. And yeah, with 28 Days Later, we have a movie that dwells on what does the zombie apocalypse look like, and here we have one that says, well, what does it look like if you stop it and then it comes back, you know. And yeah, I'm not gonna claim that it's like unique to show the rise of the zombie apocalypse. There are other movies that do that, including ones that came before this, but I'm not sure. I don't offhand know of one that shows, you know, yeah, for a while we got it under control, you know, because that's the thing. That's a different fear. The idea that, yeah, like we'll you know, I mean, the first movie, when we're introduced to the actual protagonist of the film, it's not immediate, but it's not very many minutes into the film. Jim, you know, he wakes up and it's the zombie apocalypse, and he's been, you know, in the hospital for a while. Yeah, comes to, what the fuck, you know, and that's a really chilling concept. You know, he walks around the normally busy streets of London, and there's just no one, you know, just like, yeah. But here we have the idea that maybe it's never gonna end, you know, because like the first one ends on some note of hope. It's like, oh, maybe we will be saved, you know, and we get this shot of one of the infected, and it's like, is that thing looks like it's starving to death, you know, that does not look like it's still, you know, ready to sprint around. And then in this one they say, yeah, but that's not the end, you know, and that, yeah, I think this is a really solid way to do a sequel. There's a lot of sequels where in a similar situation, you know, they will just say, well, it's still going, you know, they maybe they thought they had it under control, but there's something, you know. But for it to actually come back, you know, and again, like, in part the infection is a metaphor for these viruses, you know, and it's not even really a metaphor, but yeah, it's about our anxiety around epidemics. Yeah, one of the great fears about epidemics is, even if we think we have it under control, it's going to come back. You know, I've heard, you know, yeah, COVID might come back in a big way. You know, yeah, and you know, I don't know enough about it to talk about. It's just, that's what I've heard from credible sources. If you want more information, please look it up, and please make sure the source is credible. But yeah, I'm not trying to start a fucking panic or something, you know. Maybe we will be able to get it completely under control. But yeah. Yeah. Parts of the film definitely do feel like they are really fawning over the first one. A number of scenes are referenced, sometimes very directly, but there is a twist to them that there wasn't in the first. And yes, it is a stone-cold fact that at least one piece of music is used 3 times over the course of this less than 100-minute movie. That, if you read that and you don't know, you might think, that's got to be an exaggeration. Who would do that? But no, that's literally true. I understand why a lot of people feel that's excessive, even those who, like myself, absolutely fucking love that piece of music. I have this thing where I can listen to the same piece of music a lot of times within a short space of, like, there have been cases where I, on purpose, listen to the same piece of music 3 times in a row. I tend to do this when I'm by myself, don't worry. But, yeah, I appreciate a lot of people, probably most people, do not feel that way, and for them it is too much. Yeah, they're right, yeah. I think it might be intended as a leitmotif, but it's a bit too intense and harsh for it to function as such. I kind of wish they had made a piece of music that could fit and just use that instead. Let's see. I think... Yeah. One critic points out, it blurs the line between genre entertainment and a photojournalist shots of the next urban catastrophe. Fresnadillo, who also co-wrote the screenplay, understands the true horror lies in the moral choices men and women make in the direst of circumstances. As a director, Fresnadillo shoots and edits some great montages. It's all very frenetic, but actually works with content here. Lots and lots of beautiful visual montages. There's even a really nice montage scene where the U.S. Army snipers, bored with lack of zombies to shoot, watch the repatriated Brits. And let's see, I think that might just about bring us to... So yeah, Robert Carlyle does an amazing job here. He's always, like, I've never been unhappy with one of his performances. I don't think I want to give too much away about his character. I'll just say that he's one of the most interesting. There's something genuinely fascinating going on with him that, not everybody responded to equally positively. I get it. I think it is worth giving it a chance. Let's see. Yeah, and Rose Byrne, again, always great. She plays Scarlett, a U.S. medical officer. It is kind of like an Australian playing an American when they could have just had her be British, but they did want to make a point about, like, U.S. military, so yeah. Jeremy Renner plays Doyle, a Delta rooftop sniper, and IMDb trivia notes the character of Doyle is referenced to the director of 28 Days Later, Danny Boyle. The name Doyle consists of the D from Danny and the oil from Boyle, making Doyle. And Jeremy Renner, dude just loves playing snipers. Not exclusively, but, like, some kind of military or special forces kind of thing. And occasionally there will be some, moral choices he might have to make that, are, somewhat morally ambiguous, that sort of thing. I am not going to give away whether that is also the case here. It's just, clearly the guy loves playing characters like this. He's fascinated by them. And he's really, really good as them. By complete coincidence, I actually just rewatched Mission Impossible 4, where he is also, and that came out like 4 years after this movie. So, let's see. The new Mission Impossible's coming out, so wanted to refresh my memory. Right, Harold Perrineau plays Flynn, helicopter pilot. Also great. Really dig him in everything I've seen him in. For a while, to me, he was this character from the Matrix movies, but I do also really... I think he's great here. Probably my overall favorite performance of his. Romeo plus Juliet. He's just so freaking good in that movie. Why am I saying frickin'? I haven't run out of fucks to give. Macintosh Muggleton plays Andy, Don and Alice's son, Tammy's younger brother. And this kid is really, really great. Like, there's a lot of actors who just can't quite... You know, at that age, he's playing a 12-year-old. I think he might be 12, might have been 12 when they filmed, but yeah, just really, really strong. Yeah. Right. Catherine McCormick plays Alice, Don's wife, Tammy and Andy's mother. Yeah, at this point I might as well say, yeah, Robert Carlyle plays Don. I just won't give more away about his character. Yeah, the Imogen Poots plays Tammy, and yeah, it was apparently felt one of the keys to the success of the original was a teenage girl trying to stay alive during infection. But yeah, she's also great, and the movie is again in part about her relationship to at least one of her parents. And yeah, just I really want to see more that she's in. I think I've seen her in like at least one other thing, but yeah, just fantastic. And yeah, she has gone on to have a career after this. Yeah, just Andy and Tammy are some of the characters that you really get invested in my opinion. Let's see. Critic, yeah, I forget if this is a user review or a professional critic, but yeah. The inclusion of child characters may elicit some eye-rolling, but both are acted surprisingly well, and Imogen Poots particularly stands out with a broad range of emotion she's capable of displaying. Her character Tammy is an elder sister to Andy, and so her fear is grounded in concern for his safety. Although Macintosh Muggleton is impressive, his character is given a little less range, which doesn't really allow him to survey his surroundings with anything other than a mild panic. That is true. But yeah, amazing. Right, and Idris Elba as Stone. Again, you know, I want to say he is English, but yeah, he's also playing an American, and yeah, fantastic job. He does not have the most screen time out of everyone in the movie, but you remember him. Like, he makes a very strong impression. Let's see. You know, he is more... I think he was happier working on this movie than some of the MCU. Now, let's see. I think that might just about... cover what we're gonna get into of the acting. Yeah, a lot of the cast are now bigger stars than when they appeared in this, and yeah, it's no wonder they're amazing in it. And it wasn't only this that made sure they got more of a career. Yeah, the ones who need to have convincing American accents, the cast are nearly all British. Renner and Perno are the exceptions. Right, and yeah, there's good credibility, authenticity, and psychological accuracy. Let's see. And yeah, there are some very interesting emotional situations in this. And... right, part of why the cast... I suppose I won't give away none of the cast return, but certainly, you know, I'll say that not everyone who survived the first movie makes an appearance here, and yeah, it was simply they were occupied with other stuff. I don't think the movie needed them, so I'm pretty happy with the decision. They didn't try to recast them. If an actor from the first movie does not appear in this one, neither does their character. So I guess if you really badly want to know, you know, you can look up the full cast list on IMDb. But yeah, I really appreciate this as a story, a separate story in the same universe. And it's, again, you know, the first one took some inspiration from Romero's Trilogy of the Dead, and I'm aware there, you know, he's made more since those first three, but when that first movie came out, he had only made those three. And yeah, you know, I won't give away which, but at least one of those movies does not bring back, you know, surviving characters, and yeah, I don't think they needed them. I really think it's great when we can just tell multiple stories in the same universe, and it's not like they're just doing the same thing. You know, that might feel like, okay, why make another movie if it's just going to be the same thing? It's very different, you know. So yeah, it's the next chapter of the overall story of England being, you know, ravaged by the rage virus. You know, that is what this is, you know. And I think, you know, there are a lot of movies where I'm really, really glad that we get some of the same characters returning, you know. But yeah, so far I'm not entirely sure if any of the characters in this one are going to be in the new one 28 years later. But yeah, I don't think it needs to. Now, all the extras who played infected were required to have a movement-based artistic background, including such occupations as ballet, dance, gymnastics, circus performing, and miming. And it really works. Like, just, yeah, you know, the first one had a similar, you know, requirement, and yeah, the movement is genuinely, like, nothing moves quite like rage infected, you know. Right, yeah. In case you didn't watch my video on the first one, sometimes I call them zombies. I know it's late in the video to be saying that, but just to be, no, I'm not. This is not that. The fuck. It's, yeah. I'm aware some people don't think these are zombie movies. In part, I refer to them as zombies and zombie movies because that makes it easier to do straight comparisons to actual zombie movies, as I've already done. Now, yeah, so since the movie moves very fast, it doesn't really slow down to develop the characters. It is able to provide some character development without slowing down, since basically everyone is reacting to the same thing. Everyone's focusing on the virus, what it did, whether or not it might come back, that kind of thing. Some people are abandoning each other. Some people are sacrificing themselves for others. Some focus on short term. Some focus on long term. That sort of thing. You know. So, yeah. Let's see. And there is something that one character does very early in this movie, a decision he makes that affects the rest of the movie. And I argue the movie is worth watching at least once just for that. And there are other important, meaningful decisions made by characters in this. Now, I think that might just about bring us to... So yeah, the cinematography, there's still a lot of handheld, and it works really well. It feels, yeah, you know, I already quoted the you know, the critic noting it feels like war photography. It feels like we're watching, yeah, footage from, you know, there's a battle and someone is filming it to try to get, you know, yeah, and it really works. Again, I think for the movie overall. Again, like with the first one, some people really hate it, and I respect that. I am not here to say those people are wrong, even though they might be. No, just kidding. Seriously, though, if you hate shaky cam under any and all circumstances, the movie is ultimately not for you. I would argue that it does not use shaky cam when it is simply not right for the movie to do so. And you know, similar to the first one, it does that thing where it will sometimes cut from like a medium shot to like, I guess they're not necessarily as much close-ups in this as, you know, but it'll cut from a wide shot to a medium, and sometimes the shaky cam will be very shaky and it's chaotic, but you get enough of just enough of a sense of like, yeah. There are times in this where it is as impossible to tell exactly what's going on as with the first, but then there's also times where you can very clearly tell, and I think that was the right choice for this one. I'm not saying the first one necessarily needed to have the same cinematography as this, but I think it was a good idea to change it up slightly without abandoning. I am willing to hear you out if you completely disagree. I do not think this movie would have been better with completely traditional photography, you know, not shaky cam. Let's see. I think I've said what I had about the editing as well. Right, so some critic quotes. The dark passages and twisting camera coupled with machine gun rapid shots make the movie frequently inscrutable. Not a big deal to horror fans, but a frustration to us commoners who think the premise has promise of showing human nature at its Darwinian worst if we can only figure out what's happening. That mysterious mise-en-scène keeps us from connecting with the principals as we did with Cillian Murphy and Naomi Harris's characters in 28 Days Later. I respect I agree with a good chunk of that, but I do disagree that we cannot connect with them because we can't quite figure out what's happening. I agree that there are times where we cannot figure out what's happening, but again, like, I think those are what works there for me, not for everyone. And I do feel bad for the people. I wish they could enjoy those, you know, like I mentioned, I love certain aspects of this, and like it's this thing of like you can just barely tell. Like I would argue there's no time in this where you're completely uncertain if someone is safe in their immediate circumstance or not safe, like if they're under attack, basically. So basically it is these scenes where there is some safety. You know, it's not necessarily a lot of complete safety in this entire movie, but you know, some safety, and you get conversations between characters, and it's stuff that, you know, is important to hear and to feel, or there's danger. And like, I mean, I would personally argue it's either that it feels like, well, there's just how is anyone able to get out of this situation, and that's, you know, that is something that happens in these chaotic situations in real life, or it's like, oh, okay, they're here, there's danger there, and they have to get past the danger to there. And yeah, I think that works. I appreciate it doesn't work for everyone, and that's an important, you know, if you're considering whether or not to watch the movie, if that is just not enough for you, the movie is not going to be your cup of tea. Even though the Brits make a mean cup of tea, you know. There are some very nice shots. Back to critic quotes. There's some very nice shots of abandoned London in this movie. Actually, there are a lot of very nice shots. Actually, there are so many shots, and they take so long that it gets fully boring very fast. And to make up for those nice long shots, the movie, the action is shot so fast and so messily that it's impossible to make out what is happening. The footage here is so frantic and so low quality, it's an assault on the senses. I respect that critic's opinion. I don't think that the shots ever get boring, but again, I 100% respect, yeah, for some people that is going to be the case. I don't think it ever slows down to the point where it gets boring. See, again, it's this thing, like with the first one, like with The Road, it's acknowledging, you know, it's not always going to be exciting. You know, the zombie apocalypse, there's going to be moments where it's like, well, let's, you know, someone's sitting reading a newspaper, you know, it's, And yeah, if you think that is going to really bore you, there's a chance, you know, and that sucks. But yeah, keep that in mind when you are deciding whether or not you're going to watch this. I think that it is just enough that you get a sense of, oh, okay, you know, there's a sort of normalcy here, but not so much that we end up with like, oh, it's, yeah, the it's like exhausting kind of thing, you know. Let's see. Right, yeah, so the, 28 Days Later had a budget of 8 million and a box office of 85.7 million. This one had a budget of 15 million, so almost twice. It was not as big a hit at the box office, 65.8. But yeah, you can 100% see that it is a much more expensive movie. Yeah, and a lot of it is, again, shot on location in and near London. You know, not absolutely everything, but yeah. Let's see, I'm seeing there's something in Wales, you know, so yeah. But it really adds authenticity, and the just, fuck, I guess is that a spoiler? I think I'll save that bit for the actual thoughts section, but yeah. Let's see, I think that might just about... Have I already made clear? There's this one has a what's the word? There are certain fears that this plays with, that the first did not. And let's see. Yeah, the music is very suspenseful and tense, really worked for what they were going for. Yeah, incredible soundtrack, worth owning and listening to. And let's see. Right, and yeah, John Murphy had only 2 weeks to compose the entire score for the movie. I don't think you can really tell. I don't know if that's why it reuses music from the first one. Oh, let's see. I think that might... I mean, certainly it might explain why one piece of music from the first one is used 3 times. Yeah, as usual, you know, I would argue if you give it about 30 minutes, if you've watched 30 minutes of this and you're just not into it, yeah, you know, if it's not going to offend someone you're watching it with or something, you may want to, it might just not be your kind of movie. You may want to stop watching. So the best elements for this is it's a tie. The pacing, the action, the increased scope, what's the word? The humanity and the moral complexity, which does top the first one. And that's, again, not a dig on the first one. The first one is not as much about that, and doesn't really need it. But a sequel, you know, you gotta go bigger and or deeper. This one tries for both, largely succeeds at both. Yeah. So yeah, some have said that it lacks the humanity of the original, and that's a complaint I ran into several times. As you know, that seems to be something that a number of people thought were like the worst thing about it, and yeah, I just disagree with them on that. But I do think if it were true, it would be a huge problem. The thing I was most worried about was that it would be an inferior sequel, and no, it is, well, certainly not by much. It comes very close to matching the first in overall quality. There are aspects where I prefer the first. The thing I was most looking forward to was a continuation of the first, and boy, it exceeded my expectations. Yeah, this such a... It sucks that so many people hate this movie. I'm not necessarily saying they're wrong, but I think this is one of those where there's so many sequels that can learn from this movie. you know, I've been very happy with almost everything I've seen Danny Boyle work on. I think that is part of why this is such a strong sequel. There's so many, you know, the Scream 2 makes the claim that it's, you know, largely true. Sequels by definition are inferior films, you know, but yeah, this is one that actually understands how to, yeah. The trailer does give at least a little bit too much away, but there are some things that it does not give away, and I really admire them for keeping that away from, because they actually, some of the best things in the movie are not in the trailer, and I'm so glad that that's the case, because you shouldn't know it before watching the movie. The trailer is worth watching. The alarm siren is so, it goes right into the lizard brain and says, run, run, now. I don't even care where to, just get the fuck out. There's something horribly wrong, you know, just, yeah. The cover and poster do not give too much away, and do a really good job. You know, I show it again real quick. You know, yeah, we see Tammy and Andy, we see, you know, bodies infected, you know, off in the, like, the horizon, so, you know, clearly it's not completely safe. We've got the, let's see, I think the first one has the symbol for the toxic, the fuck is it called again? Yeah, let's see, and yeah, you know, you can see that the scope is larger. You see helicopters and shit, you know, just, yeah. It's a really, really solid, you know, and also note that Tammy and Andy, not just, like, in the same shot, but actually, like, holding on to each other, like, trying to, you know, so yeah, conveying it's in part about them as like, you know, a family unit, and, you know, protecting each other and finding some comfort in each other's presence and survival, and yeah, really, really solid work there. Let's see, I think that does just about cover. Let's see, right, so the special effects, it's one of those things, like, when they can go practical, they do, and it's really great. There's some really, really memorable bits of like violence and gore and such, which, you know, for a horror movie, zombie sort of movie, that is part of the appeal. This is significantly gorier than the first one. There is one scene in particular, like, fuck, they took their assignment seriously. Like, if you watch the first one, like, this isn't a zombie movie, it's not even a horror movie. I still don't really understand why you wouldn't call it at least a horror movie, but whatever. If you're like, zombie movies gotta have more gore than 28 Days Later, give this one a whirl. Yeah, if you think there's too little gore in this, I don't know how to have a conversation with you. Like, I don't think there's too much, personally. An argument could be made that, is some of it gratuitous? No, because, like, it goes to, it is important. Yeah, the violence does convey something in this movie, you know. So yeah, if you're one of those people, you know, this is not a dig or anything. If you find yourself wondering, is this too violent for me? The answer is yes. You don't even have to, like, offer up examples or comparisons or something. No. If you think there's a chance, it's almost definitely too violent for you. It is a very violent film. It doesn't really hold back. And, yeah, the part of, you know, the thing, yeah, it's conveying something, and some people were very reluctant to face it head on, and left negative reviews on it, in part on account of that. I'm not going to say it's 100% that, but yeah. Let's see. But yeah, I do not think it ever gets numbing. I appreciate some people might disagree on that. And I think that might just about... Yeah, I already mentioned there's at least some sex. I also don't think the sexuality is, you know, like, it could easily have been like gratuitous, but again, it conveys, you know, they're trying to live a normal life. You know, that's, you don't have sex if you're like, well, you might get horny if you're worried about you're about to die, but the way the sex scene is done, it doesn't look like they're thinking about, we're gonna die in a minute now. It looks like they're just trying to have a healthy, happy relationship, and yeah, that includes sex, you know, romantic relationship. Unless you're asexual, I'm not trying to do any ace erasure here. That is not what we do on this channel. Let's see, I think that might just about cover. Let's see. Right. The language also feels appropriate in, like, you know, a lot of the swearing in the film. It's, you know, like military people, especially when they are in a bad situation, you know. Let's see. I think that might cover. Am I missing anything that? Right, yeah, just briefly, so yeah, some versions of the DVD have commentary on the entire film by the, you know, yeah, Fresnadillo and one of the, and Enrique Lopez Lavín, who's one of the three writers. It has, let's see, 5 minutes of 2 deleted scenes that you can watch with or without commentary by those same 2 people. They're good. It's character development, one from the start, one from the end, and they do explain well why they cut them. There's some informational behind the scenes. Let's see. So about, what is it, 27 minutes total of those. A 7.5-minute animated comic book, 28 Days Later, The Aftermath. Stage 1 development, universe backstory written by Alex Garland, directed by Danny Boyle. Interesting, really fills in some blanks. And another animated comic, you know, 5 minutes, 28 Days Later, The Aftermath, Stage 3 Decimation, also universe backstory. And it's fine. And then the 2-minute trailer is also on there. Yeah, overall, I rate this 8 pathogens out of control out of 10. And yeah, I definitely think the movie holds up. In some ways, it's even more relevant than it was when it was made. I hope this eventually gets a reappraisal. I don't know if it will happen. Let's see. I think, was it, fuck's his name? YMS. I forget his real name, but the guy who runs YMS. Let's see. I think he did both movies and preferred the first one and really did not particularly care for the second one. I think that's from what I remember. It was like a while back, you know, so I might, you know, if you're at all interested in the details, please check out his video on it, or videos. I forget if he made more than one. Yeah, you know, and I think it was his first viewing. You know, he had held off on, or was it rewatched? Anyway, so, you know, others have rewatched this movie recently, and some of them did not like it. Yeah. So, all of the zombie movies I've watched, worst to best. I'm going to speed run this because there's a fuckload of them. I like zombie movies. What do you want? The House of the Dead 1, Day of the Dead 2008, Resident Evil Retribution, Diary of the Dead, Land of the Dead, Resident Evil 2002, Resident Evil Apocalypse, Resident Evil Extinction, Resident Evil Afterlife, Resident Evil The Final Chapter, The Fog, The Crazies Remake, Quarantine, Rec 1, Dawn of the Dead 2004, Shaun of the Dead, Prince of Darkness, The Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the... Oh, fuck, did I not put... Oh, yeah, give me a sec. Yeah, obviously, after Army of Darkness, and I appreciate not everybody agrees with me on this, come The Evil Dead Remake and Evil Dead Rise, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, 1978, Day of the Dead, 1985, 28 Weeks Later, 28 Days Later. And that is it for the... did I not put... What the fuck? Okay, here we go. Yeah, that's it for the spoiler-free review. I have been talking for 55 minutes. Yeah, let's get into the spoilers. So just gonna real quick note. It is indeed, well, I guess, let's see. Yeah, let's go with that. I really love that right, yeah. So, final warning, I will be spoiling everything in the movie from here on out. So, you know, viewer discretion is advised. I really love that the opening shot carries more meaning than we might think, because we actually see the heterochromia right there immediately. As soon as she lights a match, you know, we start with a few seconds of absolute pitch black, and, you know, she lights a match. By the end of the movie, it's clear that is, you know, an indicator of the actual immunity. You know, so yeah. And her and her son have the, you know, let's see. Yeah, and we only realize that very close to the end, after Don actually bites, you know, or is it the blood? Yeah, you know, once he gets the infected fluids into Andy's system. Let's see, and also great how the opening starts out seeming like it might be taking place before the outbreak. You know, we don't know. Like, we know that it's a movie set in that same world, but it looks so normal at first, you know, just, yeah, gradually we get little hints. Talk about how fortunate it is that the children are away on a school trip and such, and we realize, no, this is set during the infection. The two of them are not alone in the cottage. There's other people. Let's see. There, and they are coping with infection spreading in different ways. There's the fairly naive young woman, you know, said, no, he's gonna want something to eat when he comes back. And there's the more cynical guy who's like, you know, no, he's definitely not you know, he's either not coming back or he's coming back hungry for something other than pasta. And immediately after he says, it's us in here and them out there, there's knocking on the door, and we think it might be one of them, you know. It's this wonderful little, because, like, and fuck, I'm sorry, parts of this movie I fucking love. It's a knock at the door, you know, like, it could be family visiting. Like, a knock at the door is not supposed to be a scary thing, but, you know, the world changes in this horrifying way, and there isn't something completely equivalent in the first movie, you know. So just it's a wonderful addition here. And let's see. Yeah, you know, ultimately it's not wasted that she puts some pasta, you know, at an empty chair. The kid gets that, and he's so hungry he eats with his bare hands. That's B-A-R-E hands. His B-E-A-R hands he leaves. You know, you don't want to have those at the dinner table. That's rude. Great when the light floods in, we realize it wasn't actually nighttime. It was just the boarding up, and we bought it because who eats pasta early in the day? And the answer is, of course, those who don't have a choice. Like when there's a bunch of infected out, so you can't go shopping. You know, pasta, canned tomatoes are the kinds of things that can keep for a long time, and you might have just lying around. I really love the way that, you know, before 28 weeks later is revealed as the title, we see the stages of infection rising, then falling, given with a number of days and weeks later as well. And you know, because, yeah, in the first one, it's like, oh, we see the immediate infection, we see the actual patient zero kind of thing, and then 28 days later functions as a title, and also telling us, yeah, you know, almost a month has passed. And then in this one, you know, it seems to be very early in infection. We get the days and months, and 28 weeks later still functions as both title and telling us how much time has passed. And again, it's just I'm so glad. Like, apparently for a while they were considering like 29 days later, or having something set during those first 28 days. And I mean, if they do it down the line, if they have a great idea for it, sure. But I'm so glad that this is 28 weeks later, and that the next one is years. You know, it sucks that they waited so fucking long that it didn't really make sense to make 28 months later. But yeah, I really appreciate seeing what happens this long after the first film. That's such an interesting question, and again, it's something that so many sequels, because there's this such a frustrating mentality in Hollywood. It's like, no, we have to see the next thing. People want to see the next thing, and sadly, a lot of the time they're right. Sadly, a lot of the time, people reject sequels. That's like, no, it's been a while, and it's such an interesting. Like right fucking now, we're watching like, well, you should be watching anyway. If Star Wars has any kind of positive, meaning to you, I really recommend Andor. We've gotten most of the show now. There is more than one time jump on that show, and like so far I'm fucking loving it. I love that decision. I'm so glad that we're getting the different stages. They're doing such good. It's not a spoiler. Don't worry. I'm not spoiling Andor in this video. But just you can do so much with a time jump, and that's something Star Wars has understood from the very start. George Lucas knew way back, let's see, I think that does that bring us back to, was there more I wanted to say? I think that was, let's see, right, and yeah, it is very credible that eventually the infected would just starve to death if quarantined, which is part of what makes the ending of the movie so terrifying. How do you stop them if they aren't starved once they're in France? It's easier for them to get to other countries as well. If it's only England, an island that can be cut off, let's see. Yeah, the young woman, I think her name is Karen, and I guess she kind of is one, going up to the door to look for her boyfriend. Very effectively done. Now that the door has been opened, they know there's at least some non-infected out there. She just has to see if he's one of them. And this brief moment of sentimentality, of emotion overtaking rationality, has severe consequences. We see that again later in the movie when Don chooses to kiss Alice. The entire attack on the little cottage is very intense, very effective. As Don runs, we see him chased by a higher number of infected than we could make out at any point in the entire first movie. Like, I'm sure there were a lot of them, but the camera work made it very difficult to tell, and at times in this one that's also true. And seeing them, right, and later we'll see even more infected in just one shot. Like, I fucking love when there's just the horizon, it's right there on the cover. I'm so glad that they managed to fit that on the cover in a way that isn't, it's not like you see that as like, oh wow, you're giving away the ending of the movie, because technically I think the first time we see it is very late. It's when they're hiding near the playground, on the playground, whatever, and just like, oh fuck me, just seeing that many of them and knowing how dangerous each individual one is, and it's not one of those things where, oh well, that's too many. It just becomes diminishing returns. Let's see, the right, I think the bad choices made by characters in this help. Like, I find myself wondering, would I do that? Like, if I thought the I hate to say it, but I think I might. If one of my loved ones was like out there, and there's like, well, there's at least one still living. I don't think it would work if she just opened the door without the kid being there. That would be like, well, what the fuck are you doing? No, but but the moment that there's at least one out there, it's like maybe there's more than one. It's not necessarily like why well, why would there be, and why would he be one of them? There's such a small chance that he Was it? Should they have taken the? Wait, is it supposed to be her boyfriend? I guess it's slightly unclear. It could be, because like certainly that could be argued to be a reference to a classic zombie movie. If she's attacked at the door by a loved one, Now, let's see. I think, yeah. Seeing the infected move so easily in water, very scary. Like, it's only once Don gets the engine going and the little boat is able to sail very fast and far that he's able to get to safely away from them. He can't outrun them, and getting into water isn't enough. Jacob dies in water because he's not able to jump quite far enough to get into the boat. I quite like the camaraderie between the NATO forces. Let's see, the individuals, and I definitely will say it's extremely credible to me that they would be bored just watching people through windows, giving them nicknames and such. Not one, right, and technically there are curtains, but we can also clearly see, I mean, you can see right through them anyway. And yeah, I mean, maybe they're just used to living in areas where you didn't have to worry about someone being a peeping Tom. And yeah, at the end of the day, like, the fact that the curtains can be seen through by the snipers, it's important for the snipers to be able to see them through the window. Privacy is a luxury they cannot afford in their current circumstance. It is a great touch that the reason Alice is not able to escape the cottage without being attacked is that she tried to save someone, namely the kid, whereas Don specifically gets out because he did not try to save someone, namely Alice. This is a world where survival instinct can keep you alive, but attachment to another person can get you killed. And by the end of the film, we've seen that attachment to others can also be good. Doyle sacrificed himself, which saves the other three, and if Tammy had not gone to save Andy, the hope for the cure would have been extinguished with him. Like, it's possible Don would have killed Andy as he killed Alice. Let's see. It's not an either or. It's about finding a balance. And yeah, I love the idea of a potential cure. I think it's such a great way to, increase the stakes, and it feels like it works within, like, the, it doesn't feel like out of place to the world, and yeah, I think there are some franchises that, horror and or action franchises. I think Alien and Predator have both, eventually they took turns in their what's the word? Mythology that I don't think were for the better. And I do appreciate this is only the second movie. It's not impossible the third will shit the bed. I have a lot of faith in both Danny Boyle and Alex Garland. Yeah. Despite, as mentioned in my video on Civil War, I did have some issues with that movie. But, yeah. I haven't watched everything either of them have done yet, but I don't think either of them have made even one movie that I just thought, okay, that's just fucking shit. That's just, there's nothing of value there. Now, let's see. Yeah, the cure thing, because, like, it's established so early on, oh, you have heterochromia. That's actually very rare. Which explains why we haven't seen other carriers, even though we've seen a bunch of people become infected. And then Alice is brought back. You have heterochromia too. You are the mother of the other person with heterochromia. You are a carrier, and she points out there's some chance that he's, gonna be, he'll lead to the cure. And just, yeah, it's such a great, because, like, it helps the action be very focused, because, like, some of the time there's several people in an action scene that are, like, people we would like to see make it overall, but at the end of the day, like, first and foremost, we especially, I'm not saying it works for everyone, but for those of us it works for, we especially just gotta see Andy and Tammy make it. Like, oh fuck, you know, and in part, you know, it's one of those things where, like, you know, if you're like, I wasn't crying, the movie didn't make me cry, no, you know, you can always say, no, but it's secure, you know, it's you know, but yeah, it absolutely does, like, yeah, I really appreciate that element. I think it's such a great way. I think this movie would be significantly lesser if not for the Cure element. Let's see. I like that they clearly found one of the more pleasant military people to do the announcements on the train. Like, you know, it even has a pub. You know, because it's like, you know, you don't want someone to be like, oh, fuck you, I can't believe I got this fucking bullshit gig. I was like, fuck, they want me to say this and then this. Call me when I get to shoot something. You know, just, yeah. Let's see, you know, she feels like a fucking tour guide, a tourist. Yeah, someone that a tourist would come to for information, kind of thing, you know. Let's see, and yeah, we again see London in a state that we'd rather not see it in. You know, in the first, empty and abandoned, there were signs of violence, like no returned car, that sort of thing. Here it's not quite the same, and we also see more of London, like we would rather not, but, you know, it's the cleanup, the long-term effects of infection. So, you know, someone wrote on their roof, I am here. We find ourselves wondering if that person was actually rescued in time, you know, because they were inside London, you know, like in the first movie, they survived by getting out of London. You know, that was part of it. They got far away from where there were a lot of infected, and, you know, whoever was in that building obviously wasn't. We already know infected have a pretty easy time getting into a house. They can break through glass, sometimes doors. Let's see, we're seeing military men handling bags that say biohazard, so clearly something they worry may carry infection or the like, burning a pile of bodies in bags. Just really upsetting imagery. As soon as we meet Scarlett, immediately we learn she is unhappy the children are now being brought back into London. You know, I'm sorry, if you introduce a character, you know, they're seeing something they don't like, and they just say, shit. I'm sorry, I'm a mark for that kind of thing. It's just such a great, just, yeah. You know, because, like, immediately you get it. You know, I'm sorry. If you've never had, maybe you didn't say shit. Maybe you said poopy. But we've all been in a situation where we're like, no. You know, so just immediately we understand, you know, yeah. And we learn, you know, what her job is, why, you know, yeah, she's, let's see, yeah, while one could easily make jokes about her being what I understand is a chunk of the child-free population who just hates kids. Like, to be clear, I'm not saying you have to have kids. I don't. I never will. You know, if you don't want to have kids, please don't. And I don't think there's something wrong with it being a part of your identity, but don't be mean to other people's kids. Like, the kids didn't choose this, you know. If you haven't already, watch Cheyenne Lynn's excellent video on, I think it has child-free in the title. So, you know, in general, you know, her videos are great. Let's see, but yeah, you know, obviously, in part, it is, she's worried about how they're going to handle, you know, having kids. You know, she points out they don't have protocol for it yet. And you know, the general who, let's see, right, I already said that. Yeah, you know, he identifies code red as something referring to if infection returns, they will kill anyone that is infected. And this is exactly, of course, exactly what does happen later on. So, without it being too on the nose, nobody directly calls it out. Mentally, we are encouraged to think of it as, with the kids returning, so will infection. And yeah, if the kids hadn't been there, they wouldn't have gone, you know, to their old home. Alice wouldn't have been brought back. Don wouldn't have kissed her. You know, yeah. Obviously, I'm not saying they could possibly have known that would happen. And I appreciate that technically they weren't expecting to find their mom there. They just wanted some you know, they wanted a picture, you know. But they did know they were breaking rules. After all, Don has been there for a while, waiting for them. He didn't go to the old house. He also knows where it is, you know, like it's again such a human thing. It's a mistake. But like, I'm sorry. Maybe you were like a perfect little wunderkind. Maybe you never did something that you shouldn't have. But I don't know. I guess you're unique in that, like, most of us did do something, you know, and yeah, like, and it's again this wonderful thing because, like, on the other hand, they wouldn't have realized about carriers and a possible cure if not for that. So it's this thing of, like, you know, sometimes mistakes, sometimes it can have serious consequences. You know, sometimes something you did as a kid can fuck up your life and others, and sometimes it can make the world a better place. Like, if they, I don't know if the third one is going to have, like, cure stuff, but if it does, it'll, you know, there's a pretty decent chance it'll relate to this movie's cure stuff, and yeah, wouldn't have happened if they hadn't found Alice there, you know. So yeah, I'm sorry. There's so many things throughout history where you can point to, you know, that it's not always like one specific event or action or decision, but yeah, you know, yeah, in the short term it caused trouble, in the long term it did a lot of good. Yeah, Don lies to the kids to not give them hope. He didn't see her die, but it is a reasonable assumption. Everybody else attacked ended up turned or dead, and it's not like he's, you know, yeah. Such a corny joke when she goes for the keys to the pizza delivery bike. You see, you know, rotten pizza, and then there's a sign that says, you know, we never deliver our pizzas late. Just, yeah. I like it. Very creepy dream of Alice removing her face and, yeah, genuinely engaging and, you know, and he's genuinely worried he's going to forget what his mom looks like. I'm sorry, I do not understand people who don't feel anything for, just like, it's fine to say, you know, that you hate what he does, but if you can't, yeah. I'm gonna move on. Let's see, yeah, you know, and after all, what 12-year-old brings a picture of their mom with them on a school trip? Obviously, you have that kind of stuff at home, and now they haven't been able to go home for half a year, so, yeah, you know, they just want to go get the picture, so that, yeah. And let's see, yeah. Yeah, you know, after the kids leaving to go back home, they're not intending to stay long, you know, and they've been told all infected are dead. You know, they think that their parents and other adults are being overprotective, which is something that 12-year-olds and teenagers experience a lot, to the point where it can get difficult to tell when it's that and when there is actual danger. Great when Andy sees Alice again, and at first, like, you know, there's these seconds where it's like, but is she infected though? Is she? Because she's like crouched in a creepy way, and she's not saying anything, and she's moving, and then, you know, there is this realization and recognition, you know, from both of them, because, you know, obviously at first he doesn't, you know, at first he thinks it's Tammy fucking with him, you know, sibling, it's just, yeah, teasing, but yeah, you know, for a little while it's a loving hug, but it goes a little past that. She squeezes too tightly, and like her fingers are like digging in, and it's because, like, she hasn't held him in 6 months, you know. But it's also like, but if she was bitten, is she infected? Is she attacking it? It's such a wonderful little moment. Just, yeah. Let's see, and the yeah, we see a little bit of blood in one of her eyes, and it is understandable that Alice is not very chatty when Scarlett talks to her. One of the only things she seems to say is she wants to see her children. Very compelling when Tammy and Andy confront Dawn, who thinks he's going to yell at them over leaving the secure zone, and he's trying to maintain he didn't lie. Let's see, and yeah, Tammy says, she wants to see Mom, and Dawn makes his way to where Alice is. We're getting audio and sometimes also visually intercut with the discussion between Scarlett and General. She points out, long term they might be able to make a vaccine, even a cure. And not long after, Andy is separated from the others. Basically, the rest of the movie, for those of us from whom it works, we desperately want Andy to become safe again, both because we care about him as a person, because it could mean the answer to infection is here. And let's see. Did I really not write? Huh. I'm uncertain if I did write it anywhere, so I'll just briefly talk. No, yeah, that's right. I wrote it elsewhere. Yeah. I do think the initial attack by Dawn is the movie having its cake and eating it too, because it doesn't want a lot of infected running around immediately, so he just sort of kills the first two he comes across, which, usually they... yeah, they'll kill, but I guess it's especially the fact that then he turns the third one, when so far up to that point in the movie, it varies exactly how. Let's see. I think in the first movie and up to this point in this movie, it seems like the infected favor killing those they attack. It's just that sometimes they're unable to. Prevent it in one way or another, and the infected are not attacked by other infected. Let's see, but yeah, and so the reason for this, is of course they want Dawn to be the one infecting the massive group that have been quarantined where Andy is, and all that, where Andy is on top of the car and the whole thing. So he infects one, and then Scarlett kills that one. But so if he was close enough to infect the guy that is then close enough to attack the kids, Dawn's kids, well, I guess the kids, the only kids in the film, other than the one at the start. But why didn't Dawn go to his kids? Because he spends the rest of the movie following his kids. It's such a, yeah. And again, it's because they wanted Scarlett to shoot an infected right in front of Tammy and Andy. That was the scene they wanted, and they couldn't really think of a good reason why Dawn, it's just the way I would have done it is he infects one and then chases after someone who's able to block a door that slows Dawn down, and he's banging on the door. So the one that he infected goes to infect someone else who well, let's see. Yeah, I guess the one he infected runs off and ends up with the kids, where Dawn doesn't go because he thinks he can get to the other one. And later we realize, oh, he must have eventually got to that one, and then he returned to going after his kids. Now, really effective when we see the bite mark on the arm of Alice, and the camera again make sure we see the blood in her eye. Genuinely upsetting watching all these innocent civilians be shot because the military lost control of the situation. Compelling discussion, though short, about whether to try to stay or try to escape, which Doyle pretty quickly resolves, and of course some of the civilians manage to run off, find a place to hide once they see that the military can't control the situation, and even start shooting civilians. Very sweet when Tammy and Andy are reunited, and because we've already seen Flynn and Doyle as friends, the whole rooftop, blah, I had that dream about Drive 2 kind of thing, so the conversation pretty quickly goes to the secure channel, yeah, other channel. It is a good detail that Doyle does actually agree to shooting everyone at first. He doesn't shoot all that many before he decides to stop, but if he had survived the movie, I can imagine those would still haunt him, you know, so as, you know, yeah. In the review itself, I talk about, you know, Jeremy Renner. Sometimes his military, often sniper characters will do something that's morally, you know, questionable. Yeah, very much happens here. And I think he's one of those actors who can play that well, because it's important. You can't have too neutral of a face, because then it's like, oh, I guess you just don't care, you're blasé. But he's also not, like, overacting, because it's not like, you know, a Stallone character breaking down in tears kind of thing, which I'm not dissing, though. I quite enjoy some of those performances and movies, but it's wrong for this sort of thing, you know. Like, imagine if he, like, sees Andy's like, what am I doing? You know, tears pouring down his face. Like, no, that doesn't make sense for the character or the scene or the movie. Now, let's see. Yeah, let's see. Sam is right. It's madness. This isn't Sparta. I can't help but notice the repeated motif of hand-holding. Sometimes it's someone asking or demanding, like Scarlett. Sometimes it arises organically. Sometimes it's refused, like Andy won't hold Tammy's hand after once they're walking. Yeah. It happens like once, so you probably know what I'm talking about. But yeah, Scarlett sees it as a way to ensure their protection, because cure. It is undeniably also a symbol of love and connection. Sam is unwilling to run across, and he is technically right. You know, Doyle is using him as bait, but then the other shooter is throwing away bullets like they're candy. You're gonna take a deep breath and look the devil in the eye. So instead, Andy makes the run, and is indeed unhurt, which might also be in part plot armor. It seems like he's just more heroic than Sam, but really he's thinking about his PlayStation 5. You know, if they all die, he'll never play it again. But that's what I would be doing it for. I don't just mean if I was still 12, I mean today. I'm just kidding. I don't have a PlayStation 5. I don't even have a PlayStation 4. Now, the movie is in part allegorical of the wars we in the West have waged in recent years in the Middle East. I am sad to say even some of my fellow countrymen, some other Danish people, joined in. So when Doyle says, you know, when he got a 12-year-old in his sights, that's not a target anymore, he is obviously referencing, via the allegory, you know, he's not saying that, but the movie is saying, you know, the many children killed, you know, civilian children, civilian children killed. I'm not saying, I'm not gonna litigate the rightness or wrongness of killing a child soldier if it is a life or death situation, but, you know, a lot of the children killed were civilians in those conflicts, and they were killed by Western forces, and that was part of what made a lot of us turn against the war. Well, I was against it from the start, but, you know, I appreciate that not everyone was. Let's see. Really good moment at the playground talking about, you know, how their mother really is dead. She's not coming back this time. I'm sorry. I don't understand people who don't engage with this movie emotionally at all. You know, you do you, but I really think you're missing out here. Yeah, and the bit with, you know, ETA 60 minutes, seconds. Let's see, and when Doyle said, you know, like, Scarlett's like, you look pale. I can't stand the sight of blood. Like, okay, even by my standards, that is dry. Like, holy shit. Yeah, very, very dry wit there. Yeah, Sam foolishly grabs onto what Flynn refers to as the ski, but I can sort of forgive him because the last bit of the movie is really fucking cool. It gives us the famous, arguably iconic bit of all the zombies being chopped up with the helicopter blades. You know, I think there was at least one other zombie movie around the same time that did similar. From what I recall, this one is the superior version. It is also a good detail, nice touch. Flynn at first refuses to take anyone but Doyle, and then doesn't answer Doyle over the radio afterwards. So it's like, well, I mean, they have no choice but to go and hope he Doyle is like, you better fucking be there. Let's see, and incredibly claustrophobic when they're in the subway. It is somewhat reminiscent of the tunnel in the first film, but with more movement, less of them stuck in one place fixing a thing, and then, the night vision also adds another dimension to it. And yeah, I'm not always the biggest fan of night vision photography in, like, fiction movies, but it works, in my opinion, seeing just, yeah. And it is incredibly scary to imagine walking without being able to tell what you are stepping on, and yeah, eventually they do fall over bodies. I understand those who find it frustrating that at first the two don't answer Scarlet, and Scarlet shouting "stop" on the escalator, I want to say it is. Let's see, and yeah, I do maintain it's in character, if understandably somewhat annoying and frustrating. Doyle sacrificing himself to save the others is compelling, and we get a full body burn. The first film also had at least one, and them avoiding the gas in the car is so tense, and they have to drive in order to avoid a fucking helicopter gunship. And yeah, biological warfare like gas and flamethrowers are, again, something that is horrifying and does happen in modern war. Gas has been used in some, at least, yeah. I do not understand how Dawn went from attacking and killing Scarlet to not attacking Tammy, who was very close by, to attacking Andy, who is further away. Like, that really felt like they had an idea of what they wanted to do as far as staging, but they couldn't quite work out how it would make any sense. It's the kind of thing, like, I think you needed more distance. I think Scarlet and Tammy needed to be so far apart. Because that's the thing, like, you don't really need them to find each other again. Like, if you just removed the bit where Tammy says, Scarlet, I can't find Andy, after they get separated on the escalator, if that's not there, then it works at that point, Let's see. Yeah, genuinely incredibly sad and scary when Andy is attacked by Dawn. Such a relief when it turns out that he did indeed have the same genetic trait. He is a carrier. He is not one of the usual infected, just like with his mother. And it's also like, if Tammy hadn't shot Dawn, I think there's a very serious chance Dawn would have killed Andy, and that would have been it. No hope for a cure. Let's see. Yeah, on the nose symbolism, but I like it of them going into the light at the end of the tunnel. Right, and also when Andy gets up and he runs away, and it's this thing of like, well, is he infected? Because we don't know at that point in the movie if he really does have the, it's one thing that he has heterochromia, but is that connected to the carrier thing? Immunity? Yeah. Yeah. And it's this thing of, because Frank tried to get, I'm sorry, I can't believe I'm sorry, it's too many names, I can't, his daughter, yeah, he tried to shout at her to get her to stay away as he felt he was turning, and Andy runs away from Tammy as he worries he's turning. And also this thing of like, Tammy says, together to the end, together forever no matter what. And also this thing of like, in addition to him dying, it's the end of the cure. So just, yeah, I really think they did a good job of doing like a twist on that scene. Yeah. And this is also, I think it worked really well that this movie does not fundamentally change in the last third. Like, I suppose an argument can be made that it's more or less a movie of two halves, although I think it's more than half of the movie that's them dealing with the infection, but it feels so organic to the movie that I don't think it's really something that, what's the word? You aren't, it doesn't become a different movie, you know, the way that the first one kind of did, you know. It doesn't change the overall, it becomes, also in part because it's a continuation of the very start of the movie. It's about the survival of, at that point it's no longer Don, it's his kids, but, you know, it's still about the survival, it's the survival of this line, you know. Someone from this family has to survive, and at first it's just, you know, they're kind of the de facto protagonist, you know, or he's the de facto protagonist, but later it's the cure. So yeah, let's see, and very understandable. Flynn is at first reluctant, but yeah, ultimately Doyle did tell him he wanted the kids safe. And I love the detail that Tammy puts herself in front of Andy when there's a gun pointed at the two of them, you know. Let's see, and and him like reading her lips instead of her shouting. It would have felt very awkward if, you know, and yeah, we see him looking through a scope pointed, you know, on the gun pointed at them. So yeah, and it's not like she has like a full conversation, you know. It's not like, you could end up in bad lip reading territory very easily, but yeah, you know, I think she just says, it's just us. And yeah, you know, it's easy to understand, it's easy to deduce that that's what she's saying. So, some stuff from the commentary track. In the first scene, it was important that the audience figure out on our own that they have all the windows boarded up. They didn't want to tell us that until the boy arrived from the outside. I love when movies do, because, like, normally you would have an establishing shot. You might even establish the hell out of that building, and this was the exact right choice to not have that, you know. Let's see. The reason we see the snipers watching people is the underlying military is trying to maintain control. If you struggle too hard to control something, that's bad. And yeah, the snipers watching people is crossing a line. Let's see. Yeah, the boy's dream underlines that he's not willing to accept that his mother is dead. Originally, the boy, meaning the mother, was different. A day-for-night shooting in the last third. Can't work with child actors during the night, and also, like, he likes the kind of creepy atmosphere of day for night. The only time they used this effects for the helicopter was when it was chopping up infected. When it's flying close to the ground, it's actually real. I am definitely not saying that there are good answers to all the questions and issues raised by people who don't like the movie. Like I say elsewhere in this video, I think this is one of those movies where you just kind of have to let the movie take you, go on the emotional ride. And yeah, I will get into some of my answers for the, you know, some of the questions and issues raised, and I definitely recommend you read the IMDb frequently asked questions. And let's see, the is that every, let's see, the right, so yes, some people say once the military starts shooting everyone, the film just spirals into your basic zombie chase movie, losing red shirts left and right. We are introduced to and then lose a few characters, giving us no richness of character along the way. I definitely agree with the, you know, yeah, zombie chase and the, you know, yeah, characters like Sam, red shirt, yeah, absolutely. But the richness of character is for, you know, it's especially Andy and Tammy, especially Tammy is probably the most complex character of the non-infected in the last chunk of the movie. You know, before that, Dawn. But the, yeah, I don't think that it's a bad thing. Right, and I suppose this is a pretty decent time to say. So in the review, I say there's an interesting aspect to Dawn that, you know, yeah. I am primarily referring to the whole conflict with him and the fact that he ends up being crucial to restarting infection. Yeah, him as an infected. I think it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, no, I'll talk more about it in a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, so right. At least one user reviewer said, "Pointless story." Hardly. It's about finding a cure, protecting those who could provide it. Like, what's the... Like, you don't have to like the point of the story, but saying there isn't one is just silly. Right. One person said, almost all of the military just go along with shooting people who aren't infected. No. We just only see a few. We only get a tiny glimpse of the military action taking place during the movie. I think it is ridiculous to imagine that there are not ones who refuse to shoot, refuse to drop bombs, etc., but they're being replaced by others. And I respect the point of view that we should have seen that. I think it would have slowed down the movie, and ultimately I think we see just enough, because like when, you know, let's say I think it's right after the firebombing, we see several of the military people being like, what have we done? You know, what the fuck did we just... No, I cannot believe... You know, like... Would be nice if they did that before, whatever. But, you know, yeah. That, because, like, it has come out... I forget exactly when, but I believe it was after this movie came out. But, yeah, you know, drone operators... You know, there was a while where we thought that... the drone operators were just like basically psychopaths, but it has come out, no, a lot of them are just replaced. You know, after a while they refuse to do it, and they're put somewhere else, and someone else is brought in until they can't do it anymore. Right. One person said the movie's too flippant in the killings of characters. It's like it just wants to gross out the audience. I don't really agree with any of that. I especially don't think it's to gross us out. I think it's trying to say, look at how horrible this is. You know, yeah, I already mentioned, you know, the movie is in part like critical of Western interventionist wars in the Middle East. You know, it's putting a white face on something where a lot of people didn't care that much when it was Muslims. You know, like I mentioned earlier, you know, it was especially when it became clear, oh, kids are being killed by our people, our military, you know. But yeah, here, you know, it's people of all ages, and they're white, they're English, you know, like, do you see how this could be upsetting to people? You know, imagine if it was people who looked like you. That's my read of what it's doing with that, and yeah, I think it succeeds. I mean, I suppose, I mean, I already cared, so I can't say for sure, but I think it does, because it feels so much like war. You know, it doesn't feel as much like of a typical zombie movie. Like, there's a lot of zombie movies where it's not that the military is just like gunning down, especially not people who aren't infected. It's more these smaller little fights, like battles, rather than all-out war, where this essentially feels like urban warfare. You know, it's bigger, and yeah, like it doesn't make me think so much of like, because, like, you know, there's a lot of individual zombies that we see, you know, sometimes a lot at a time in the original Dawn of the Dead, but that movie isn't showing people just gunning down, again, especially not people who are not infected, you know. Yeah, it makes me think more of war, of, yeah, urban warfare, like the wars in the Middle East, that you know, Western interventionist wars, than traditional zombie movie. Yeah, at least one person said no one to care about. I can only speak for myself, but I care about each of the major characters. Like, there's not one major character in this entire film where I just feel absolutely nothing. Yeah. And one user reviewer said, how can a child and a teenager get past security without being noticed? They were noticed by the snipers, who are there in part in case someone sneaks past the cameras. It's especially funny when people start by making that claim and then go on to say, and this is a direct quote, how could the military possibly find the two kids so quickly? Well, which is it? Were they not noticed, or were they easily found? Never mind. They find them quickly by keeping a close eye on them when they cross the bridge. I find it very hard to believe that they don't have systems in place for exactly that situation. You know, let's see, thermal imaging maybe, and it's not like there are a lot of human beings in the city that would make that difficult. Like, as far as they know, there's not even one human in the city currently. You know, it's a zone that you're not supposed to go to. They probably contacted Don, since Scarlett knows about Andy. He would immediately be able to tell them what their old address was, and we see him see that they're not in their room. You know, maybe he contacted them. You know, he was like, we got to do something. My kids are missing. And, you know, yeah, Scarlett knows him, Tammy, and Andy. Maybe he contacted her directly. And, you know, yeah. And yeah, of course, it's a very logical place for them to go. He knows they're upset about their mom. You know, like, I'm sorry, some people are just not willing to do a little bit of legwork on behalf of the movie. Like, we don't need to see these things because it's so fucking obvious. Like, of course this is what happened. It's just, yeah. I'm sorry, it frustrates me when people are unwilling to... It's just like, you didn't like the movie. There was something about the movie you didn't like, and now you're just nitpicking instead of just, like, I'm sorry, I myself, at least these days, I'll acknowledge I wasn't always good at that. I try not to nitpick something just because I don't like a thing about it. And let's see. Right, the director told the lead actor, I think I must have meant Carlisle. Now, I don't remember his first name, but yeah, Carlisle. Told him he feels bad for the infected because they had lives. That is a big thing for this. He wants us to, too. He tries by first introducing Don, then making him complicated, then infecting him, having him turn into the main antagonist of the movie. Throughout the movie, yes, we're scared of Don, but we do also understand he's not driven by hate. There's this strange kind of love driving his actions. It's tragic. He's hurting his family, but doesn't realize it. Clearly, he feels something for his children. He thinks he's protecting them. I'm not quite sure that I would say it works, but it is an interesting idea, and there's nothing like it in the first movie. That one has the father killed immediately after he turns, and that was also, you know, there's the original ending that was scrapped, where they actually managed to get him back, you know. So, like, the first movie did also care about, you know, the father character who is infected and don't think he should die. Right, I do want to acknowledge about the death. This one obviously does have significantly more character death than the first one, and I do understand why that would bother some. It would bother me if I thought it was mishandled. Let's see, yeah, and yeah, it is interesting that infected Infectodon does behave in this very different way. You know, yeah, it was interesting the first time, and here it would be a retread if he just behaved exactly like we've always seen. Yeah. For all those who loved the first movie, obviously one of the things we love is the whole family theme. When it looks like the only survivors are alone, they no longer have their families, it is sad. Then we meet Frank and Hannah, and it's a real boost, you know, a lot happier, and then Frank dies, we're sad again. This movie also tries to have a family-centered drama, and yeah, with Dawn, it is asking us to accept a lot. Now, I personally try to do that kind of thing when there's something that I think could be really interesting the movie is doing. And with this one, there's just parts where I can't quite get there. I've already talked about some of the weird decisions of, like, Dawn, you know, why does he infect that person and kill that other one, and stuff like that, you know. I think I've seen some say, you know, Dawn is the only infected that focuses on his family rather than running around randomly attacking, and that's what we've seen before from other infected. I don't know if I agree with that, because technically we didn't see anyone else infected near people we knew for sure were family members. You know, like I mean, every time there's, like, family members, they're either dead before the movie starts, or before the 28 days, yeah, before the majority of the movie, or they die so soon after being infected, like I mentioned with Frank. So, yeah, I mean, I think an argument could be made that this is what always would happen under circumstances. It just didn't happen on screen. It wasn't a situation that was depicted. But, yeah, I mean, maybe some of the infected groups, several of them are family members, and they were infected because one of them was infected, and then that person ran around obsessed, found the others, infected them. You know, yeah. And I've seen some describe Dawn as basically psychic. Now, that kind of thing can work in horror. Just ask Stephen King. I don't think it works for this franchise. You know, I love slasher movies. We're willing to accept, okay, the bad guy read the script, whatever. He knows where to be, how to attack, who to attack. You know, I really tried, on this viewing especially, I really tried to see, is there a way that you could see it as him not being psychic? Because it's such a, yeah. I don't want psychic stuff to be part of this franchise. If it had been from the first movie, maybe. I think some of the time it works because, like, okay, he knew, you know, he worked at this place. He knew that the fuck, what's the word? He knew the God damn, my back pain is killing me, but I gotta get through this. I'm getting my back treated tomorrow, so I'll be okay. Just gotta focus despite the pain, no matter how sharp and persistent it gets. Don't worry, you're right. If you haven't watched any of my other videos to know, no, my back is gonna be okay. I just, you know, seeing a chiropractor tomorrow. That'll do it. Fuck. Yeah. Don knows the procedure, so he would know where they would be quarantined. So he goes there. You know, that makes sense. I'm genuinely not sure if he actually is there. There's this one point where he and Danny are, like, looking at each other, and then Doyle steps in front of where Don was. Then when he walks away, we don't see Don. So I guess that's the thing. Like, I guess, is Andy psychic and has some sort of connection with? Because it's like, if I feel like there's enough there that you could read it like that, and that's, yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. I appreciate, you know, this idea that love can connect us. You know, I'm in favor of love. I'm a big believer in love, and not just familial love. Yeah, I think it pushes it at least a little bit too far if it really is like a psychic connection. But yeah, you know, how did he know how to avoid the firebombing? And how did he know that they were gonna go into the was this subway? You know, like, it's just, there's a little bit too much of that kind of stuff. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, the firebombing, I suppose, could he have known? But who would have told him? He's not military. No, the firebombing, I maintain, yeah. So, yeah, I really appreciate they didn't just make the same movie a second time. They're both set in London after the infection started, follow a small group of survivors. And since the first was a small-scale, intimate character study, the second is larger scale, basically like almost a war movie. So, I really appreciate about this movie, it never slows down and also never repeats the type of action and tension for very long. So it never gets tedious, and it's just short enough that it doesn't get genuinely unpleasant and like numbing to be so tense for so long. It's tense for most of the film, but the action is nonstop for, let's see, okay, I'm just gonna, yeah, 6 minutes in when the infected attack. There's 4 minutes and 40 seconds until Dawn is escaping, and then from 44 minutes in until an hour and 27 minutes. You know, and then the movie ends just a few minutes after that. You know, so that's 43 minutes and 20 seconds. Right, yeah. So more than half the movie like that, and so I've already mentioned some of it. You know, let's see, what else? No, yeah, I guess I have basically described every major. So yeah, you know, yeah, I've described every major action scene, I think, by this point. So yeah, incredibly varied, you know, and they genuinely, they must have sat down and been like, okay, what can we work into the film that is like part of modern warfare, you know, and yeah, they did such an amazing job. They really, I don't think I'm not sure I can think of anything that would like fit that you know, yeah, that they could have put in this movie. Now, yeah, and the movie starts with a scene that is bigger than any of the ones from the first, immediately telling us this is going to be a bigger, faster movie. It shows that even in the British countryside, with several survivors taking precautions, ultimately, only one person was able to leave without getting infected, and Dawn wouldn't even have been able to get away at all if not for the boat, you know, taking out some of the infected with the engine run propeller? That's not right. Whatever. Let's see. It's like when people say stalactite when they stalagmite. Am I winking with the right eye? You know, be meaning stalagmite. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Some people take issue with the fact that we don't see exactly what happened on the helicopter. You know, like we see that it has, you know, yeah, it's on the ground, and now the infection is in France. Dude. The kid is a carrier. All it takes is one drop of bodily fluids. This isn't rocket surgery. Presumably the kid sneezed, you know, onto some, you know, like possibly Flynn, you know. That would do it. Let's see. Maybe, you know, he showed them part of, you know, his scenes in Romeo plus Juliet, and that made the kid laugh so hard that he sneezed. I don't know. Right, some people dislike the gore, the fact that the U.S. military lose control, the fact that the virus spreads, the civilians don't seem to know what to do, military starts shooting regular people, and commenting that they don't know who is and who isn't infected. I agree that it is clumsy, but I do think it is worth noting the movie's commenting on the unwarranted invasion of Iraq. Instead of infected, think radical Islamists. By 2007, a lot of people were aware many Iraqi civilians had been killed by U.S. troops. Over the course of the movie, some of the time we're watching people that the movie has made us care about, and I acknowledge that everybody cared about them, be attacked by U.S. military. We in the West don't usually fear the U.S. military, so the movie's asking us to empathize with those targeted, people who aren't white, whose first language isn't English. when the American military in the movie are trying to kill Andy, who we think, and it's later confirmed, is immune, they're actually risking making things much worse, but obviously the military people are justifying that what they're doing is necessary and good. Basically, the movie is asking you to stop and think, when American military people tell the rest of us that what they're doing is necessary and good, maybe we should look further into that. Maybe they're actually killing innocent people. Please don't be one of the user reviewers who just said, and I paraphrase, "It has nothing to say." What you mean to say is, I don't like what it's saying. And let's please not pretend that politics is new to the zombie subgenre. The original Night of the Living Dead, yeah, I guess it's a spoiler, so I'll just say there's something in there that, yeah. And I appreciate George Romero claims he didn't mean for that. You know, all that tells me is that it was subliminal, even for him. The original Dawn of the Dead is about consumerism. The original Day of the Dead is about the fight over leadership between the military and the scientific community. You know, these are things that actually, yeah. And as for what Dawn of the Dead, the remake, is about, I'm going to recommend you Maggie Mae Fish's video. She did great analysis on it. In general, fantastic YouTuber and actress. I really want to see her in more. I was not surprised that she was spot on in Identities, which, you know, is on Nebula right now. I'm not being paid for this, but Nebula, you know, yeah, that short film is awesome. So is Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend. And there's a lot of amazing stuff on Nebula. It's where you can find Lindsay Ellis's most recent stuff. You know, she posts very, very little to YouTube these days. I am not going to relitigate the, yeah, cancellation of her, if that's what we want to call it. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, she does great acting. Maggie Mae Fish does great acting in her own videos as well, in the ones where she does that. Now, some say it doesn't make sense that Alice survived the 6 months. I mean, regular infected do not eat food. She has plenty of it. Have you not gone to, like, a convenience store or a mall or something and just, like, looked at how long the fucking dates? Like, I'm sorry, I could go to the store, you know, right now and find something that, you know, you can eat in like months from now. Yeah. And yeah, a lot of it, you know, easy to make edible. You might not be able to cook it the way you would want to, considering certain circumstances, but no, I mean, I'm sorry. If it was 6 years, I'd be like, okay, you're gonna have to explain that one. Where did she get food for that much time? But yeah, let's see. I agree that there are a lot of irrational decisions made by characters in this. I do not agree that they are unrealistic. People make bad decisions based on emotions in real life. I don't really see a huge problem with them doing it in fiction. I appreciate that for some of them, they end up frustrating. I really appreciate that with this sequel, it seems like they legitimately wanted to provide a movie that gave viewers all of the things that the first one was criticized by some for not having. A huge amount of infected, including scene chasing our leads, a clear answer as to whether or not the infection had spread outside of England and how other forces reacted, and a real threat that it could spread outside of England. Military who are sympathetic and are actually trying to protect people, not all of them, but some. Hope for a cure. Let's see, and yeah, what it looks like when the infection spread. I like that Don's wife is named Alice. Clearly someone working on this felt that like there should be at least one good zombie movie released in 2007 where a major character was named Alice, and felt pretty confident that Resident Evil Extinction wasn't going to be it. They were right. I'm sorry, Russell Mulcahy. I really love some of your work. I fucking love The Shadow, for example. You did your best. You were hampered by a terrible Paul W. Anderson script, as his scripts tend to be. Scarlett notices the heterochromia and is reminded of that tosser who tried to use that as a pickup line. A number of people dislike that the two kids and Dawn are the ones making terrible short-sighted decisions that lead to the reinfection of England. I understand. I used to share their frustration. Here's what changed. I realized that basically either the movie has active or passive lead characters that do not make a major impact on the plot, but are rather carried along with it, as is the case with all the red shirts, even as the plot goes through major changes. I think it's understandable that they chose for them to be active, and then either the characters get England infected again because of malice or through ill-thought-out actions. Again, I think they made a smart and understandable choice, but of course you are allowed to disagree. Fuck, what was the other thing I want to say about that? Because yeah, like, you know, they can't really affect the plot in a positive direction, you know? Like, that doesn't really happen in this movie. Like, there's a hope that eventually we'll get a cure, but the major decisions made in this movie tend to lead to horrible consequences. Like, I'm not saying every single individual one, and certainly making sure to protect Andy, you know, seems like there might be a hope for a cure. But other than that, yeah, they tend to, yeah. And I'm sorry, I appreciate the tragic element of it. You know, it is like, I'm sorry, I agree that with this movie's theme that sometimes we are our own worst enemy. You know, we as a species and we as individuals. You know, we when it comes to the in-group. Let's see, I think that might just about... Yeah, the footage where the snipers are trying desperately to figure out who is and isn't infected, and the ones where they're just shooting everyone, deeply compelling. Some people seem to be under the impression that we are supposed to either condemn Don for leaving Alice or think that he was completely in the right. I think it's somewhere in the middle, like, because it's one of those things, like... let's see. Oh, right. I wrote it down under the... Yeah. Let's see. Right. A number of people criticized Don had so much access, saying it doesn't make sense for a janitor to... I don't know. I mean... It's definitely convenient for the movie. I think the way I read it, he did have clearance to those areas. They like did psychological tests and everything, and because he was convinced that his wife was dead, he passed those tests because no, he's not. The kids are safe. His wife is dead. It's sad but true. Yeah, like he genuinely didn't think that he would ever take a risk like that. And I think it's common. That's, again, we got to get better at accepting media that is trying to say something we don't like. Yeah, he is making a mistake. Unquestionably, he is doing something he knows for a fact he should not do. He has to talk to the military before something like kissing her. Just because she's not infected doesn't mean that it's 100% safe. But, you know, emotions get in the way of rationality sometimes, and I think we have to talk about that. We have to acknowledge that. I think the movie's trying to be part of that conversation, is saying, you know, it sucks, but this is something, you know, we have to... I am personally a firm believer in the idea of simply teaching children, that at a very young age, teaching children, you know, sometimes we get very upset. Sometimes we will feel something very intensely. It is extremely important that we do not act without thinking. There are almost no situations. I'm not saying there are none. If you see a car headed directly towards you, you don't have to think hard. You just have to get out of the way. But so many situations, and this is what pisses me off about conservatives, so many situations, clearly we need to think, and conservatives act like it's a virtue to act without thinking. Oh, yeah, just go with your gut. You know, you don't have to listen to those pesky... Just fucking... And they're destroying the world because they can't think for 2 fucking seconds of their life. Just... And I think this movie is acknowledging that that's a problem. And I think it is... We have to get better at accepting. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, you know. It is... Yeah. Every other way, sure, but not that one particular area. And I'm joking, obviously. Sometimes I worry people take some of my jokes seriously. I do not think of myself as perfect. Perfection is something we strive towards. We should strive towards. It is not something we will ever reach. And that's okay, because striving towards it makes the world a better place. Makes us better people. Yeah. But the... Fuck. Where was I? Yeah, we got to get better at... When a movie says, you are wrong about this, you have to do better... Yeah, we shouldn't be like, no, I don't. We should be like, maybe that's right. I should look into this. I've seen some people criticize the movie saying it doesn't make sense. The helicopter had to land so far away. Can't it just land somewhere nearby? Well, no, because the military is keeping an eye on nearby. They want to get away from the military. Like, I'm sorry, but this is said in the fucking film. Like... Pay attention to the film. There's not that many like individual little things that you have to pick up and understand. Flynn says I'm not going to be able to quote him, you know, word for word, but he says, if I fly anyone who isn't military, they are going to shoot us out of the air. You know, like... Overall, I do prefer the first movie. I do think this movie has some incredible things that the first doesn't, like the complexity of Don's choice at the start. You can spend many hours debating the pros and cons of the choice, trying to figure out if you would make the same choice under the same circumstances. You know, I'd like to think that I would... I don't know if I could leave someone behind that I loved. But yeah, I'm gonna go into the... Next, right, but yeah, let's see. The first movie does not have a choice like that. You know, like they did have to kill Mark. There was no other, you know, and yeah, Frank. You know, they don't have, yeah, and you know, when Jim kills soldiers, I mean. Maybe you could make a case for like the one who's like out of ammo and like trapped in you know, basically trapped in that room. But some of them, if he hadn't killed them, yeah, the two women would have been raped, and yeah. But you know, the question is, could Don even have done anything if he had stayed? He doesn't have weapons. Neither of them do. If both of them die, then their children are orphans. And ultimately, when he has a chance to see Alice again, he begs for forgiveness rather than like shouting at her or refusing to see her or something. You know, like the nightmare man, you know, the man you definitely don't want to, you know, the one that makes women choose the bear over, you know, is the idea where he goes to like Scarlet and it's like, she's probably infected. You should kill her and burn the body just to be safe, you know. And then he would go to the kids and be like, "I'm sorry, the military insisted. There was nothing I could do," you know, like the kind of misogynist who can't handle, you know, he made a mistake. He admits he made a mistake. You know, he hates that he did that, and you know, he begs for forgiveness. And the fact that she grants it must actually mean that she still, despite him running away, loves him and does understand he didn't do it because he doesn't care about her. But despite that fact, you know, like, again, you could so easily have had the scene be that she's like, I don't know, I don't think I can forgive you. You know, like, you could still have infection happen some way, like, you know, maybe he gets really close to her face and it's like, please baby, I'm so sorry, and she like sneezes and he's infected that way, you know, but no, yeah, I'm sorry, I really think they did a fantastic job on it. Just, yeah, it's not black and white, it's not so clear cut, And the movie, like, if not for him seeing her again later, and I mean, they get to, he begs for forgiveness, she forgives him, and then they kiss, and it's this thing of like, because on the one hand it's kind of sweet, and they love each other, they fucking love each other so much that this, like, how many times over the 6 months do you think both of them have gone over it in their heads? How many times did he think to himself, am I a fucking monster? Am I just... What the fuck is wrong with me? How could I abandon her like that? Like when he climbs out, he looks back and he sees her attacked. He's on the boat, he looks back, no one's in the window. Like, it keeps bothering him, And over those 6 months, she must have thought a million fucking times, is the father of my children a fucking psychopath? No. He didn't have a weapon. He's thinking of them. He doesn't want them to be orphans. Like, and it's just, and it all like comes to a boiling point in this scene, and then the kiss infects him, and he infects others, and so many people fucking die. It's just, I'm sorry, I don't understand how people don't get emotionally engaged by this movie. That is not something I understand. If you're someone that happened to, please post a comment. I want to understand it. I promise I'm not going to judge you. I want to understand, because I just genuinely don't. I'm not saying everything's perfect in the movie. Absolutely not by a long shot. But I do think the emotional center is crunchy and nougaty, and it's just, yeah. And the scene right after he's infected, and she can't move because she's strapped to the bed, because they think she's dangerous. They didn't think about what if someone dangerous comes to, and he's shouting and growling and he punches her multiple times and gouges out her eyes and kills her. And it's this, like, on the one hand we have the thing of just, the rage that, they seem to just attack randomly. That seemed to be the case up until this point in the movie, in the first movie as well. And on the other hand, I believe that we're seeing that he understands that she infected him, and he might not blame her for it, but there is still that anger. Like, if he hadn't become infected, if she did something that, or she's not doing it on purpose, she doesn't realize, if they didn't tell her, that would have been good for her to fucking know. But no, they're yeah. As soon as they see the bite, Scarlett should look her in the eye and say, you're a carrier. You have to avoid any kind of contact. Yeah. I believe that if he hadn't been infected, but there was something that he felt she was at least partially to blame for, he would maybe shout at her. He would be like, I can't believe you did this. What is wrong with you? But because he's, they are prone to physically attacking. So, yeah. I don't think it's completely random. I don't think he's just attacking absolutely anyone. I do think there is a personal element to it, and certainly there is for her, because she is not infected. She might be a carrier, but she understands exactly what's happening, and it is, of course, it's a tremendous fear for countless women to be attacked, even killed by someone they love, a man that is close to them, that they live with, and conservatives will claim that this is an irrational fear, despite all the statistics proving that it is, in fact, very rational. And then at the same time, they'll scream and shout about how, no, women can't be on their own. You know, and, or like together with other women. Like, there's so many conservatives who will talk about how, you know, if you're trying to like date a woman, you gotta isolate her from her female friends, and they don't realize you sound like a fucking predator. Like, you realize this is how predators think. Like, getting the prey alone. Like, just yeah. There's way too many misogynistic conservative men who genuinely believe that it is worse for someone like them to not get an orgasm in relation to a woman than for that woman to be raped. And yeah, I don't know if the movie does the best job at it, but I do feel like it is trying to convey, you know, the greatest threat to Alice was Dawn. You know, she didn't actually do anything. She forgave him, and then they kissed, which she didn't know was going to infect anyone. You know, because up to this point, you're either infected or you aren't. You're not. There's no such thing as a carrier before her. She gives, she loves, and in response, he not only lashes out and hurts her, he murders her. You know, she is defenseless. It's not a struggle. It's not a fight. It's murder. It's not cold-blooded, but yeah. And he remains the central antagonist for the rest of the movie, making appearances every so often. We never forget his presence. He's never out of the movie for an awful long time in a row without at least a brief glimpse. Like, we see him standing in a spot where it's like, okay, looks like that's safe from the firebombing, you know. It's just, yeah. And that's also, like, sometimes, again, like, it's depressing to think about, but that's, you know, the movie's not trying to give us a good time. It's trying to make us think and feel something, and maybe go out and change the world for the better, because it is a devastating fact. Some of the greatest threats to children and teenagers are their own parents, and to see it, like, I really do think the movie, like, it has a lot to say, and a decent chunk of it says so well. Just, yeah, I would love to see this reevaluated. I mean, maybe when the new one comes out, which is, let's see, I guess it's a little over a month by now, which is obviously why I'm doing this now. Did the first one about a month ago, and yeah. Yeah, just, I'm really glad this movie exists. I'm thrilled I have it on DVD so that I'm not depending on streaming services to have it available. Yeah, just, I think the fact that I've been talking for almost 2.5 fucking hours, you know, almost an hour longer than the movie itself, helps convey that I think there are things to talk about in this movie that, yeah. Okay, let's see. I don't know if I have any kind of clever thing to say here at the end. Yeah, I guess by the end of the movie, Andy has, he's going to want to be careful of, you know, like, if hypothetically you end up in a situation where blood transfusion is necessary, and he is the only one who has the right blood type that you can get to, Hate to say it, but might be better off without it.